Welcome. I'm Carl Frederick, and I will be interviewing individuals for Kenosha Voices, an oral history project of the Kenosha County Historical Society in conjunction with Kenosha Community Media. I have worked in newspapers for more than 40 years as an editor and a reporter. 38 and a half of those years were at the Kenosha News. I am also a member of the Kenosha County Historical Society Board. We hope you enjoy these programs. I'm speaking with Dominic Ruffalo, a retiree from We Energies. He worked in the gas company division for 41 years. Welcome, Dominic.
Thank you.
Now, you told me earlier that you always wanted to work for the gas company. Why is that?
Yeah, I did. I remember I was in about the first or second grade at Holy Rosary, and the nun asked, where do your parents work? You know, and almost everybody raised their hand, and they worked at American Motors. And one particular fellow said, my dad works for the city. I thought, man, that's kind of interesting. So that was always in the back of my mind to work for some place in Kenosha, in some place where it was a little bit different, you know, a little bit different than anybody else.
Okay. So how did you actually get hired? What was the process? How long had you been looking for work? What was?
Well, I looked, I would actually go once a week to do downtown Racine, because that's where they were based out of, downtown Racine. So I would hop in my car, and I go once a week, and I go talk to the personnel department. I say, hey, you got any job openings? No. Okay, I'll be back next week. You know, and next week I'd go, and they would say the same thing, and they would recognize me. You know, no, Dominic, we don't have anything. You know, I go back, so on and so forth. One fine week, I went up there. This is probably 8 months of doing this weekly. They say, yeah, we got a job opening. I say, you do? They says, yeah, it's second shift. It's in the storeroom. And I knew where their location was on 52nd Street and Sheridan Road, the old Allen Tannery. I said, yeah. So you go through this period of testing, you know. Okay, come back Tuesday, we'll give you some tests. And you go back Tuesday and you take a test. There's a couple more tests next week. And I went back next week. And I always would see this particular guy also taking tests, you know. And I thought, I'm not going to hear anything. And well, lo and behold, they gave me a call. He says, hey, we'd offer you a deposition if you're still interested. I says, yeah, I'm interested. And then he gave me the hours. You know, it's an 8-hour day, but it was second shift and in the storeroom. And I said, yeah, I'll gladly take it. So then I took it.
Okay, and then how long did you work at the company?
Well, I worked at the gas company. You know, had a few different names, but gas operations, Wisconsin Natural Gas. I worked there 41 years. I got hired in January, 50 years ago, last month. So I got hired when I was 21, and I retired when I was 62. Never got laid off. So there was no layoffs there. They weren't never overstaffed. They kept it at a minimal so they could keep everybody working year round.
So what was a typical day like in the storeroom?
Typical day in the storeroom, you would. At that time, they had the gas and electric company both working in the same building. So you would basically load the line trucks with their next day's work, with the wire, cable, different kind of fittings that they would use on the overhead wires. And you would, big reels, you get on a forklift, and you would take the old reel off that they used and put a new one on and do a checklist. And sometimes there'd be some special gas fittings that the gas department needed, and you would also load them on the back of the trucks. So it was full. And then you would they would park the trucks outside, and you would gas the vehicles up. The gas pump back then was inside of the building. So you could drive to the right of the gas pumps or to the left of the gas pumps.
Did you ever operate the forklift?
All the time, yeah.
Did they train you?
No. Oh, no. Back then, no, not at all. Back then, there was no training. But that's the way it was. And I remember driving this big electric truck. I got in it. I said, "Holy cow, it's stick shift." I never drove a stick shift. They never asked. I never. So but you learn. You learn. And one particular night, they had a brand new truck, real high electric company truck, that several people would work on, several linemen would work on it, and they never told me that on this truck you'd have to go to the right of the gas pump, not the left of the gas pump. Well, I went to the left of the gas pump, and they had a big I-beam there, and I drove the truck, and whole building shook. Yeah, what the heck did I hit? So I got out of the truck. I look up, and I hit the I-beam of the building. I bent it. So we had to the mechanics come running over because they heard the noise, and we flattened the tires, and I drove it, and then we aired up the tires, and I parked it. And, that was a lesson learned.
So did you have other jobs within those 41 years?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I got hired in a storm. I probably worked there probably 8 months, and another construction job came open. They used to call it labor. And then that later became distribution worker, and that's pretty much what they call it now. So, and I did that for about 12, 13 years. I spent most of my time working on a regulator crew. Regulator crew is, they would handle anything large. Large meters, so I got into all businesses, factories. People's houses down in Allendale had bigger meters because they had a bigger house, and you would have to go change the meters out. And, I did, and you would take care of regulation. The pits in the ground, we had a bunch of pits in the ground where pressure regulators would be, so you could monitor the pressure that goes into the main line, which feeds the houses, so they had just the right amount of gas pressure to run your appliances. And then I went from there, I became a first responder. They used to call it a service fitter. And a service fitter duty was, you were a first responder. You responded to gas leaks, inside and out, carbon monoxide. And service fitter, and back then we fixed everything that run on natural gas. So what would be a furnace? You had furnace parts in your car, truck. Water heaters, had water heater parts, stoves, so on and so forth. Gas coffee makers, they're out there. Gas refrigerators, they had once upon a time. Gas air conditioning, they had them. And you would fix anything that ran on gas.
Okay. And was there a union at the gas company?
Oh, absolutely. It was part of the United Steelworkers. And we would, I became a steward. And then, like the chief steward, then I spent a couple of contracts on the negotiating committee for the.
What was the relationship between the employees, the steelworkers, and the management of the company?
Terrible. Back then, there was two sides. There was management side, and there was labor side. And you didn't cross over that line until from when I got started in 1972 to probably mid-'80s. That's when it changed. But you took your work from your crew leader, who was also union, and they would say, you can't trust them company guys, So that's basically what it was a heavy line that was drawn between the
and
company.
If you had a problem with management, you would go to whom?
You would go, if I had a problem with management back then, I would go to my steward, and and you would file a grievance. and it was different steps. I think it was 3 or 4 steps to the grievance. You meet locally, then when you meet with a regional manager, and then the CEO would be the third step of your grievance. But yeah, there was a lot of grievances, and you look back at them, and because I was a steward, because I got involved in everybody's grievances, and most of them were just petty. Same 5% gives you all the problems. That's pretty much the way it is today in life. So.
Were you in the union the entire time you
Yes,
were employed?
yes. From being a service fitter, then I became an inspector. And that's what I retired at. I was an inspector probably 15 years or so. That's what I retired at, but I was still on union. So the whole 41 years I was a union United Steelworkers.
Okay. When you started, you said there wasn't much training, but when you got to be a service fitter or when you were in distribution, did you get any training for any of that?
It'd be hands-on, and you would work side by side with somebody who you assumed knew what to do. Sometimes you find out later on that the way you were taught was somebody who just was taught wrong to begin with. It wasn't through any kind of training department at that particular time. And when you were a service fitter, you would when you were working on an appliance, you would kind of watch somebody do it, and then probably within 6 or 8 months, you would be on your own doing the same thing.
Do you have any stories from any time as a service fitter or as a inspector?
Oh my heavens, yes. Being a first responder, you're a first responder. You're the first one. You're the first one there, and they would the company added mercaptan, which is a smell to natural gas. We get it at super high pressure. We added the scent to it at our gate stations. And you get a call for a gas odor call, and or an explosion or a fire. And one particular time, I got called on a Sunday, and by our dispatcher that there was an explosion. And I was probably at the company 5 or 6 years, and I happened to be the first one to show up at the shop. I wasn't quite a first responder then. I was still a distribution worker. So I jumped into the emergency van and headed over to the Lincoln Park area on 20th Avenue, and sure enough, there was an explosion. And the house was gone. The house was gone. So then more and more people came, and you have to determine what caused it, if it was something on the customer side or something that the utility was in charge of. And so you had to go house to house in this particular case because there's a explosive limit to natural gas. We say 5 to 15%. That's the percent of air with natural gas. So if a room's got 5% of natural gas in it, it could go off, or 15%. If it's higher than that, it doesn't burn or explode. So we had to go both sides of the street for a couple of blocks, and sure enough, we had explosive limits in almost every house that I was in. So we had to start evacuating, and so once we got everybody out, we started digging up and squeezing it off and shutting it off. And then as we dug, we could tell that years ago that the company had installed their 2-inch plastic gas main through a sewer lateral. Usually in the parkway, like where the trees are planted. Usually from the house, it's way deeper than ours of 3 feet, say. Well, this one pretty much ran almost level with the house, and then once it got past the curb, and then it went down to the sewer in the street, which is about 8-9 feet deep normally. So So this particular gentleman had to clean the sewer almost on a yearly basis, and this particular time he drilled a hole right through the gas main, which has 60 pounds of pressure on it. You turn your stove on in your house, and you get about 1/3 of a pound of pressure on it. So this is 60 pounds. So it filled up the house. He put a rag on the sewer clean out in the floor. That's what made the gas go through the whole neighborhood. Once that blew out, all the gas blew into the house. Somebody went back to get something and hit the switch, and the spark caused an explosion. It caused people to die. That's what happens. You know, I was always taught, don't ever fear natural gas, but you have to respect the product. That's one time. Another time around here, probably a couple blocks from here, I think it was on 37th Avenue. There was a gas odor. They called somebody else. Somebody else got called away on a hit gas main, so he went that direction. I got called for an outside gas odor. So as I'm turning the corner, I'm probably 5 minutes from my house to where this outside odor was, and I turned the corner, and I heard this rumble, boom. The truck shook, and I drove that quarter of a block, and oh my heavens, the house was gone, totally gone. The fellow across the street called it an outside gas odor, and because it was just pouring out of the house. And a couple minutes earlier, I would have been knocking on that front door, because that's what you do. You knock on you don't want to ring the doorbell. You knock on the front door. That front door was across the street. The house is gone. The fella died. But the fella was in the hospital for a while. He had some nose surgery, his sinuses, and he couldn't. He just got back from the hospital, so evidently there was a leak behind the stove, and he didn't smell it. And he came home and hit that switch, and it blew up that house. So sometimes that happens, but with the amount of odorant, it doesn't. So usually, if a pile light goes out, it may smell a lot, but it's not that dangerous. But that's why you have meters. You have to test to make sure that you or the person you're trying to help don't get involved in an explosion.
How did the employees feel about working for the company?
I personally loved it. Most people would say they didn't like it, but they would never leave. You know, their turnover rate is nil. You know, you work there, you never get laid off. You really had to do something really bad to get fired, and you would retire from there. So, as much as people didn't like it, they really liked it. Myself, I really liked it. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. I did it. Most of the time was outside. You know, and, once I got used to working outside in the wintertime, I didn't really mind it anymore. But it's.
Okay. How many people would be on a crew when you were doing that?
When I first started, they had between 4 and 5 people on a crew. You know, there was a crew leader, and then there was an operator, and the rest of the people were so-called laborers. But as time went on, the company got more business-like, and they went from a 5-person crew to a 4 to a 3. And now it's basically an operator and a crew leader. They went on.
Well, what if somebody would call in sick when you had a crew of 4 or 5?
Well, they would. There was other duties too that some people did. They would pull you from that duty and fill in, or they would combine two different crews. Depends how many people they had. You know, because sometimes with vacations are short, and so on and so forth. But it was a lot of people at first, and then and more with the retirements, they wouldn't fill a spot. So that's how they got down to the amount of employees that they thought they needed, and then it became more and more outside contractors doing the construction work. They quit doing appliance repairs and so on and so forth. That's how they get down to the numbers that they wanted, and they still have some employees naturally, but nothing like it was when I started.
Was there a problem with people calling in sick?
No, no. Back in the 70s and 80s, people came to work. I ain't bragging, but I went 27 years before I called in sick. 27 years in a row. So I didn't, if I didn't get sick, you keep yourself somewhat fit and you're working outside, you don't really get, you don't really get sick. There was sick time available, but mine just accumulated till I retired. Basically, I didn't have the need. Some of that has to do with your upbringing. My mom and dad were both Italian immigrants, so, and they came to America for a better life, and they got that better life through hard work and not government assistance. They got it through hard work. So that was instilled in me at an early age.
So you mentioned that there was very little turnover. So did you make friends with other coworkers? Did you socially meet outside of work?
Oh my God, yes. They were family. We would do everything together. We would play baseball. We'd bowl together. We'd have parties. We'd go to everybody's weddings and their kids' weddings, and their kids' baptisms. It was quite a family atmosphere. Well, we would you would hang out with your fellow employees a lot.
Okay. What was lunch like? Did you eat lunch with the other people in the in the job, or did you pack your own lunch?
Well, yeah, I usually packed a lunch, but back then, and especially from when I started in '72 to like '82, there was a lot of socializing. You went to the bar. You went to the bar and had lunch. And your whole crew would go to the bar, so that's 4 or 5 people. Pretty soon you would meet some linemen there who would be working in the neighborhood, and you'd have lunch, and you'd have a couple of beers, and then you go back to work. Sometimes we would have cookouts. Somebody would bring in some brats, and we had a grill, and we put the grill on the back of a dump truck and go to a park and just just eat. You call on the radio, hey, we're over here. So you get 20 people there for lunch, and you would have some camaraderie there.
So where would you hold some of your parties?
Most of the parties we had were in our building. Now I look back at it, nobody ever asked a company if you could use their building, but we would, after hours, we'd have parties. We'd have cribbage parties, poker parties. And it was always food, and we would start cooking the food before the party started. We were actually on the clock, and we'd have a slow cooker. We'd have brats going, and the beer would be there, and the brats would be boiled in the beer, and we would eat these things that were called cannibal sandwiches, raw meat. So you get this ground round, and you put a big thick onion on there, and I would never do it today, but that was like a delicacy, and that's what we did.
Okay, so the company didn't seem to mind.
No, they didn't. They knew we were having it. I don't know if because back then, now you can't go on a company property and have alcohol for sure, but back then they didn't. They probably looked away at it. Now I look back at it, but they didn't mind one bit.
So you said that for like the first so many years, there was this line drawn between the union and management. Did that ever change?
It changed, absolutely it changed. Back in the middle 80s, probably early 80s, because people would go to the tavern and have some beers. The company said, no more, we're not gonna, you can't drink any more alcohol. And some people complained. I understood it. That now to look back, it didn't make sense. So that changed, and then we got governed by the government, the Department of Transportation, where you had to take a random drug and alcohol test. Any alcohol or drugs in your system, you were done. So that kind of thinned out the herd a bit. But since that time, there isn't any more of that kind of behavior. But that back in the day, it was acceptable that would happen. You work in front of somebody's house, and somebody would come out and give you something to drink, and something to eat. It was different back then than it is today.
Did that strong line ever blur?
That strong line left. The company came out with a program that they found out about through Toyota. Toyota had a company management team, like, I forgot what they called it. And then a company would ask people, hey, do you want to be on this team? And you want to be on this team. They would take some union people, some people who were involved in the union, and other union members who the company thought would be good on this committee. And that's how, and you got a big choice. You got a voice of how the company was run from a union's eyes. So that really changed. And through time, people realized that, the company is there to make a profit, but you're valuable to them, and without them, you wouldn't have a job. So, you work for the company, you don't work for the union.
Okay. What kind of technological improvements occurred during your time there that made either your job easier or a little bit more
heavens.
difficult or change?
Yeah, back in the early days, the job was really physical. They had, some people outside of the gas company had some tools that the gas company eventually got too. But you would be a lot of hand digging, and you'd have these old cast iron pipes. That's what the gas went through in the street back in the 70s mostly. It was just cast iron, and you'd have to physically cut it by hand. There wasn't any big chop saws or power saws that we could use. I didn't even know about them if they had them. And you would cut thread by hand. These big 2-inch threads, and you would just. And pretty soon they came out with a power threader. It's like, like, what? Why in the hell did we get this? Well, we had that a while. Well, bring it out, Yeah. So, and then, like product change. They went from a cast iron to this clear plastic gas services at the house that you would glue together and hold it together and gas it up. They finally went to orange plastic, where you would actually fuse it. You had these irons you would heat up with a little torch, and you would heat it up to 300 degrees, and you would hold them together, and there you go. And then eventually that went out of there to different kind of heating elements. But you still had to physically put it together and hold it. And now they got these electric things. You put them together, you put a clamp on it, you hook it up to a generator, and it does it all itself. So it certainly has evolved. more, less hands-on, less experience needed, but you get a better product out of it because there's no room for error.
Did computers ever enter your work?
Yeah, they must have had some money left in the budget. So, but come December one year, they gave us all computers. Computers. I'm thinking, huh? I never had any typing or anything in high school. Yeah, here's a computer. You gotta be, you gotta log in every day, and you gotta, I don't even know how to, really? So they gave us all our own, and they had a little training. They had some tech people show us some things, and some people caught on and some people fought it. Me, I thought, I don't want to be a dinosaur here, if you don't change, you're going to be a dinosaur. So I picked it up, and you would put everything on there. Everything you did through the day, and there'd be different maps on there, where the gas lines were and so on and so forth. So that became a big part of the job, is that computer.
How about safety over the years? How did that improve?
Immensely. Safety, when I first got there, they always said they cared about safety, but their actions didn't always show it. How's that? If there was a gas leak, like say somebody put a big hole in the gas main, and you would go right to that leak, put this clamp on it, but in the meantime, the gas would be there, and it would just blow your hands like this, and it would be loud, and you had some kind of a muff on, but nothing. They weren't real good, and you had this breathable air. Was like a hood you put on. It looked like one of them diver suits, them old diver suits, and you had a hose, and some of you would be on the top turning this crank, which would suck the air from above, which was full of gas and car exhaust and everything else, and it would go down the tube that you had, and you would be breathing that in. Eventually, they went to exactly what the fire department has, They gave everybody their own mask, so you had to get fitted every year for it. So you really couldn't have a beard because you had to get fitted, and they would do these smoke tests. They would puff smoke to see if it would go inside of the mask. And then we would quit. We wouldn't go right to the gas leak. We would dig 2 remote holes away from all gas, and you would dig it up and squeeze it off there. You wouldn't make a temporary repair to it. You would squeeze it off, and then you would make a permanent repair. It takes longer that way, but it's a lot safer. So that's what they started. And then we got better. And then we got eye test and hearing test yearly, and it became quite an ordeal, quite a safety. And a lot of that other safety stuff came out of this committee that was formed. Hey, we need this. We need this. We can't do this. How about a better flashlight, and so on and so forth.
Okay, so your last job with the company was as an inspector?
Yeah, I was an inspector. That was, I really liked it. I became like a group leader inspector, and you would, because by then a lot of stuff was contracted, like a big main job like they're doing here on 60th Street and Highway H. You would do all the paperwork for the job, and you would do all the customer contact, and there'd be these pay sheets. They get so much for directional bore, so much for this kind of work, so much for sand backfill, and you would make out all these payment forms and turn it in with your paperwork. But you were also on call, so there was a call out list, and if they needed a body on a crew, or they couldn't get a hold of a first responder, they would call you.
So was there a lot more face-to-face?
Yes.
At that time?
Yes. Yeah, I was always a face-to-face kind of guy, and I did a lot of a lot of like renewals. You know, you would go. They had old gas lines, and some of the meters were still inside, and you would knock on the door, and hey, we're going to move your meter outside. We're going to want to put it over here. We're going to drill a pipe in your foundation, and you know that it involved in a lot of that, which was right up my alley.
So you had occasion to actually speak with the homeowner. And
yes, constantly. Yep. I had a lot of years in at the time, and they give you a long leash, a real long leash, and they would say, yeah, we get a long leash, but you could also hang yourself at that leash. So I appreciated the long leash, and I would go weeks without seeing my supervisor because we would take our trucks home, and we wouldn't even go to the service center. We would have all the paperwork with us, and we go in there once a week to test our instruments to make sure that they were adequate, our gauges, and make sure that they were proper. And I'd go weeks without seeing my supervisor. You know, if I had a problem, I would call him, but most of the time I knew more than he did anyway. So that's the way it was.
Was there ever an occasion where you thought that leash was going to hang you?
Oh yeah. Let me see. A couple of times. Once, yes. Oh, I got a good one. Yes. At the time, I was a service fitter. That had a long leash too, and I'm driving to work in the morning to the service center on Sheridan Road, and a kid ran to school, and I hit him with the truck, the company truck. Oh my God, I thought I was gonna die. He was okay. He broke something, but nothing major. I thought, I haven't seen it. Where did this kid come from? There happened to be a judge who's retired now behind me, and she stuck up for me. She said he wasn't speeding. There was a police officer because it was near a school. He said he wasn't speeding. The kid just ran out in front of him. And I constantly thought, oh, how come I didn't see him? So the company, I thought they're at, and here comes the safety department. They're going to make I thought I was done. So we reenacted the scene. The company had a camera, like a vehicle behind me. They had a camera. They would exactly how I was. So we're driving down this road where this happened, and the building was almost up against the property line, real close. So it was only a very little sidewalk. And on that sidewalk, they had one of these placards, them pyramid things like advertise stuff. And that little boy's height was exactly the same height as that. So you wouldn't see him until he was in the street, and that's what happened. So that they were. I thought that was it. And then they would check my reaction time, how fast I went from the gas pedal to the brake pedal, which was really good too. So the kid, I got a call from somebody who worked at the hospital, and the kid had been abused. This kid was being abused by the mother's boyfriend. So he would show up in the morning before school, and the kid would just run out of her house and go to school. So that's what happened. Okay. So nothing ever happened, but the kid got some help he needed, and the rest of it was history. And I thought I was dead, and I thought the kid was dead at first, but I thought the company was out to get me, and they checked it all out, and they had no avenue but to drop the case. So,
was there ever an instance where a customer and you had contact, and then you thought by the time
yes.
this was done, there'd be a problem?
Yes, I was doing an inspecting job in Carroll Beach, and we were running some gas main and some service, and we'd have to dig up the yards and a little parkway, and the lady had a nice her plants were not quite on her property. They were more in the right of way, you know. But it looked nice, and I said, well, we got to run the gas line here. Oh, you got to tear up my stuff, you know. I said, no, I'm going to have it. The company, I said, we'll pay extra. I'll have the contractor directional bore it underneath it. They don't have to dig it up. They just got to dig up two ends, and then we'll have to do the same thing to the house. I'll be here the whole time. I'll make sure it's all done right. I'll go in the house and light your appliances back up and so on and so forth. So I did that, and the lady was really looking at it, and I go in the house, and I light up all our appliances, and, you know, what about this little area here? Yeah, we got that. I got to come tomorrow, put some black dirt and seed on the two ends. And come Monday morning, they call me in to pick up some paperwork, and I go there, and my boss got this look on his face like, uh-oh. Uh-oh. You see, he got afraid to look. I thought, oh, man. I want to see you in the office. I thought, do I need my steward? No. I thought, oh, I'm in trouble again. So I go in there, and the CEO of the company is there. He come from Milwaukee. So he says, were you out in Carroll Beach Friday doing the job? I thought, oh, here I go. Yeah. I told him, yeah, it was me. Remember that lady on the corner? I said, yeah. She had all that stuff outside, and the yard was nice. And I said, yeah, I remember her well. She said, I want to thank you. I said, huh? That was my sister, he says. I know she didn't tell me that who I was. I said, no. He says, my sister said you did a wonderful job, just a wonderful job. And what a wonderful employee you are, and how glad the company was to have you. I thought, holy cow, you know. The lady, yeah, she says, that's why I came down here. So he gave me, I still have it today, he gave me like a Leatherman knife, scissors, and some movie passes, and he was grateful that the service that we deliver was better than satisfactory. So yeah, that was a nice experience. That was, because sometimes you don't always hear the good things. Sometimes employees just hear the bad things, because working for a utility, you're in people's faces all the time. You see them. They see you driving. They see you They see you in the street. They see you in their house. So there's a lot of contact there that they see. So you don't always get attaboys, you know. So that was a nice thing.
So as you kind of touched on, the company had changed over time. I mean, was there actually a change in business, or, you know, the We Energies and WEPCO at one point?
Yeah, there was, you know, the company was, yeah, they used to call it Wisconsin Electric, Wisconsin Natural Gas Company, but they were always the same. I didn't even know that when I worked there, but after a while, you know you're the same. They kept it separate, you know, but they were the same. They had the same. They shared a lot of the same things. They had different CEOs, but and then they branched off. They built that power plant in Pleasant Prairie, and they wanted to form a holding company where they could have interest in other things other than gas and electric utility work. And they would buy up, and that got approved, and they bought up the farmland, and they built a whole industrial park, a WEPCO park, and that was part of the power plant. And the power plant went through. Joe Andrea was my neighbor. He was beneficial in that. He helped the company and We Energy's employees get that through. So I would see Joe quite often. As a kid and even as an adult, he would tell me what was going on. He was a president of the, he worked for the phone company. He was the president of United Communication Workers, I think it's called, Mabel at the time, and he was a state assembly. But yeah, that changed. So the company went from from a company to a utility almost. You know, the business changed. Not that it got worse, but everybody says, well, it's not like the olden days. Well, when that happened, the company wasn't like the olden days. They were more business orientated, more dollar orientated. You know, but that's progress, and that happens in all businesses. It's run like a business, which it is, but it's really run like a business.
What was the best part of your job?
Best part of my job was probably working outside. You know, I know it sounds. I look at myself now and it's cold outside. I said, I don't know how I did it for 41 years, but you got to like it. And every day was different. You know, I wasn't putting a bolt in the car like they were at American Motors. I had something different every day. A lot of years I worked with people, and then as a service fitter for all the years, you work by yourself. They used to call it the self-directed workforce, and that's basically what it was. You had a job to do, and you did it. You did it safely, and everybody was happy.
Is there anything else you'd like to share about your time with gas company?
Yeah, as I look back, I was good to it, and it was good to me. No doubt about it. I'd recommend anybody to work there today. It didn't always pay well when I first started, but it certainly pays well now. One particular contract, I wasn't part of it. I was still in the union. I wasn't part of the negotiating committee. The company had an idea of a market-based wage. So the company's people for the contract says, this is it. We're going to have a market-based wage. Market-based wage. You guys are going to get paid what everybody else does. And the union thought, oh boy, here we go. We're done. You know. So they went to other utilities. They went to utilities and thank God. They went to utilities in New York. They went to utilities in Illinois. They went to utilities here. And he brought back everybody's pay in. Pretty soon the union gets a hold of it in negotiations, and we were 25% underpaid. So guess what? We got a 25% raise. 25% raise. We would get raises of about 2 to 3% a year. We got a 25% raise. Wow, did that make a difference? So now, because of that, you get 3% of raise every year, or 2%, 3%, whatever it is now. But when you got such a big hunk, 3% of $50 is a lot of money. So that's when it changed. But one particular year, President Nixon was president, and he put a wage freeze on. So we were in the middle of negotiations, and that was it. President says we can't give any raises out. Well, there you go. So we didn't get any raise that year. But I liked it. I liked having a long leash. I like the customer contact. At present time now, I'm an alderman of the city of Kenosha. And through that, I'm on committees. I'm on the Public Works Committee, and also I'm a water commissioner. And through my time with the Way Energies, that definitely in construction experience and knowledge, that really helped me in them committees, because water's like gas, and streets are like streets that I dug up when I was at the utility. But my job today is to help preserve some of that old Kenosha, and to make a Kenosha a better place, and to have some new types of things come into town. So it's kind of a unique position I'm in, because probably 20 years I just worked in Kenosha. And then as time went on, you worked in Kenosha and Racine, and then Racine and Oak Creek. And at the beginning interview, I told you about this guy who would see every day, every time I took a test to get into We Energies. We joined together, Kenosha and Racine. They still have their place there on KR and Sheridan Road. And I walk in the first day that we were told to report to KR. I stop and I look at this guy, and he's looking at me, and I'm looking at him. And 20 years that passed. He says, "Did you get hired in January 1972?" I said, "Did you get hired in January 1972? He says, "Yeah." I says, "You were that guy who we took all the tests together with." So he got hired. He went to work in Racine. I got hired. I went to work in Kenosha. So, and we retired a month of each other. So that was kind of an interesting thing. His name's Tom Freyer. So yeah, it was kind of unusual. Not see the guy for 20 years, and then all of a sudden, you're working in the same service center. So.
Okay, thank you, Dominic.
Thank you.